Imagine this. You reach out to her one more time, heart pounding, words carefully chosen, only to be met by silence, a vast, cold void where response once lived. Days pass, then weeks, and she remains distant, untouched by your presence, as if you were a shadow fading into the background of her world. The thing is, this silence is not just absence. It's a force that pulls at you, unmooring you from certainty, stirring a restless tempest of hope and despair, of obsession and surrender. The very thing you desire most now feels like a riddle wrapped in a paradox. How can someone's ignoring become the most potent signal of their power over you? Herein lies the contradiction that defies all simple logic. Why does being ignored, rejected, deflected, erased, often ignite the deepest yearning? Why does the cold shoulder, the quiet dismissal, feel weightier than open disdain or outright refusal? The paradox gnaws at you because every instinct tells you to fight harder, to win back her attention, to prove your worth through persistence. Yet every fiber of that persistence seems to push you further into the abyss, feeding the very distance you wish to close. You stand frozen on a tightrope stretched between two cliffs, pursuit and withdrawal, neither movement promising safety. What if the key to unlocking this torment is not in chasing, but in letting go? Or perhaps not in fleeing, but in embracing the power that silence grants her, and paradoxically, that you might rest from it. This is a landscape riddled with traps. Society's scripts preach relentless pursuit as the remedy. Call more, text more, show up more. The louder you become, so the logic goes, the less you are ignored. But such a strategy only amplifies your visibility as a desperate figure, a supplicant. It hands over your agency, your emotional equilibrium, to the whim of another's indifference. Yet, what if indifference is not the enemy but the crucible through which real influence is forged? What if the very act of ignoring someone is a weapon, a signal of power that demands a Machiavellian understanding rather than mere emotional reaction? To ignore is to control the narrative, to play with the currency of attention, not given freely, but parceled out like precious gold. At this moment, you might ask yourself, what does it mean to be ignored? Is it a final verdict, a sentence pronounced upon your worth? Or is it a challenge, an invitation to rethink the game entirely? When someone turns away, are they merely closing one door? Or are they crafting a labyrinth through which only the most cunning, calculated, and patient can navigate? And more importantly, are you prepared to trade in the naive vulnerability of "I crave you" for the cold, calculated patience of "I command the scene"? This is not about manipulation in a trivial sense, nor about playing cruel games of emotional hide-and-seek. It's about grasping the silent code beneath the social dance, the unspoken rules of power and desire written by history's most cynical observer, Niccolò Machiavelli. His insights into power, often misapplied as mere cynicism, actually reveal a profound truth about human interaction. Influence is never granted. It is seized and maintained through layered strategy. The very woman who ignores you wields a subtle form of control, testing who you are beneath the surface, probing the depths of your resolve. And her silence is the arena where this test unfolds. But why does this matter? Because how you respond not only shifts the course of your connection, but redefines your internal world, the beliefs, doubts, and fears you carry about yourself and your place in relationships. In that poisoned silence, you confront a mirror reflecting every insecurity you have tried to hide. To respond without understanding is to stumble blindly into despair. To respond wisely is to enter a realm where desire and power intersect in a delicate, dangerous dance. This is the threshold where raw emotion must meet cold intellect, where vulnerability must be balanced by strategy, a place where Machiavelli's ghost might whisper, "He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command." So what if ignoring someone is not a defeat but an opening? What if the silence can be turned upside down, not by insisting on breaking it, but by mastering it? What if you could transform the seemingly powerless position of being ignored into the most potent position of strength, and not through grand gestures, but through subtle mastery of human nature. The question is no longer, how do I get her to notice me, but rather, how do I shape the narrative so that her ignoring becomes a reflection of my unshakable presence? Before you recoil from such cold calculation, consider this. Every moment you spend chasing after her emptiness is a moment you give away your power. Yet, every moment you harness that emptiness, you recast the terms of engagement. You shift from prey to player, from desperate to deliberate. This is not about domination as cruelty, but about the sober business of influence, the art of presence that cannot be summoned or dismissed at whim. It is a philosophical and psychological crucible, one that demands the courage to confront your own worth without her validation, and the wisdom to navigate the dangerous terrain of desire with Machiavellian patience. Perhaps the most unsettling question of all is this: what does it reveal about you that her silence hurts so much? Is it a wound inflicted by her, or a shadow cast from within? And if the answer is the latter, then the path forward must begin not with her, but with a transformation inside you, a recalibration of your value, your expectations, and your consent to be disturbed by absence. The answer lies hidden in embracing the paradox. That absence can create power, that ignoring can summon presence, that silence can speak louder than words. And so, here you stand at the edge of a new understanding, caught between wanting to break through her silence and learning how to use that silence as your secret weapon. What follows is no simple manual of tricks or manipulations, but a journey into the deeper psychology of influence, control, and desire, the very machinery Machiavelli dissected so ruthlessly centuries ago. To proceed is to enter the labyrinth, where every step teaches you not just how to be noticed again, but how to become a figure of undeniable presence, commanding attention through absence itself. Are you ready to move beyond the torment of being ignored, to wield silence not as a curse but as a tool of power, to transform rejection into control? If so, the next part of this exploration will unravel the timeless strategy hidden in Machiavelli's teachings, a strategy not of brute force, but of subtlety, patience, and profound self-mastery. The question that remains: can you learn to embrace the void she offers and turn it into the stage upon which you will finally stand unshaken? The ache of being ignored pulses not merely from a simple social slight, but from a deeper, almost primal fissure within your being, a fracture carved by expectations and the desperate yearning for recognition. Why does her silence feel like a blade twisting inside, sharper than any spoken rejection? Why does the absence of acknowledgement claw at you, stripping away layers of composure until you are left raw and exposed? The answer is hidden in the very architecture of human consciousness, tangled between the shadows of your psyche and the societal scripts etched into your bones. Carl Jung once spoke of the shadow, the unconscious part of ourselves that harbors repressed desires, fears, and wounds. When a woman ignores you, it is not just her turning away. It is the awakening of your shadow self, a mirror reflecting your own hidden vulnerabilities. You see, part of this torment arises because her disregard forces you face that dark void within, the silent castaway part of your identity that craves validation but fears exposure. It is as if her silence screams louder than any insult, echoing the hollowness you try so hard to disguise. Jung's insights suggest that this internal rupture is not random. It is a confrontation with the parts of you that you most desperately wish to control but cannot, the parts that live in fear of abandonment, insignificance, and invisibility. But beyond the psyche lies the relentless machinery of cultural and evolutionary design. Nietzsche, with his unforgiving gaze, peeled back the layers of human motivation to reveal the ceaseless struggle for power and recognition. To Nietzsche, the desire to be seen, truly seen, is not a superficial vanity but the raw expression of the will to power, the fundamental drive to assert one's existence in the world. When she ignores you, this will is denied, thwarted. It is as if your very essence is being questioned, forced into the silent role of a nobody, a ghost flickering at the edges of her world. Nietzsche's eternal recurrence teaches us that this cycle of desire and denial is repeated infinitely, haunting the labyrinth of human experience like a relentless shadow. Arthur Schopenhauer sheds light on the cruelty of desire itself. His philosophy, steeped in a profound pessimism, argues that human suffering is born from unfulfilled cravings, the endless striving that never leads to lasting satisfaction. To be ignored is to encounter the unbearable truth of longing without fulfillment, a torment that sharpens into obsession. Schopenhauer's notion of the will as an insatiable force suggests that your craving for her attention is less about her and more about the restless hunger inside your own nature, an internal beast that will gnaw at you endlessly unless tamed. The societal lens complicates this further. Aldous Huxley, in his prophetic warnings, described a world where superficial connections replace authentic human contact, where technology and spectacle create an illusion of intimacy but deepen isolation. Within this landscape, being ignored becomes a symptom of a broader disconnection, a void filled with curated personas and filtered realities. The cultural expectation to be endlessly present and visible magnifies the sting of absence. When a woman ignores you, it is not only a personal slight but a reflection of a collective emptiness, a cultural narcotic feeding on your need for instant recognition and validation. This hunger is more than biological, it is social and existential. Jean-Paul Sartre, the philosopher of existential freedom and anguish, illuminates the deeper paradox of being ignored. His concept of the look reveals how others' perceptions shape your very being. To be seen is to exist. To be ignored is to become invisible, to be erased from the social mirror in which your identity is formed. Sartre's haunting assertion that hell is other people underscores the terror of social negation, the fear that others will deny your subjectivity, leaving you trapped in alienation. When she ignores you, it is not just rejection but a threat to the fragile project of selfhood you have constructed. It is a silent erasure that demands a response, a reassertion of existence in the face of negation. Yet, amid this maelstrom of psychological torment and philosophical despair, Viktor Frankl's existential psychology offers a fragile beacon. Frankl, who endured the darkest abysses of human suffering, taught that meaning arises not from external validation, but from the inner freedom to choose one's attitude in any circumstance. If the woman's silence can dismantle your sense of self, it also opens the possibility for a radical reclamation of your identity, not as a reflection of her acknowledgement, but as a sovereign actor in the theater of your own life. Her ignoring you is a challenge, a crucible in which your deeper purpose and resilience are forged. This unrelenting interplay between your shadow, your will to power, the insatiable hunger of desire, cultural alienation, and existential negation creates a vortex of emotional turmoil that seems designed to consume you. The deeper consequence is subtle but devastating, the risk of losing yourself entirely, of allowing another's indifference to dictate your value and dictate your reality. This is the hidden force behind the pain of being ignored, a force that can erode your identity until all that remains is a ghost haunted by absence. And yet, paradoxically, this void, the very silence that threatens to undo you, holds within it the seeds of mastery. The same force that strips you bare can become the anvil upon which you forge your new self, resilient, magnetic, and unshakable. To understand this, to harness this, you must delve further still into the maze. For now, recognize the truth. The pain of being ignored is not a mere social inconvenience, but a profound existential wound. It cuts deeper than words, because it threatens what it means to be recognized as a human being in a world that demands visibility. Where will you place your next step? Will you succumb to the abyss of invisibility, or will you learn to wield its shadow as armor and weapon both? The answer lies in the next revelation, where Machiavelli's cold, unyielding strategy will show you how to turn this torment into an art, a stratagem of silence that commands presence, an alchemy where absence itself becomes your greatest strength. But beware, in this game power is not given, it is seized through patience, cunning, and the unflinching mastery of self. The labyrinth awaits, and within it lies the true battle, not just for her attention, but for your dominion over yourself. You might think being ignored is just a simple dismissal, a fleeting shadow that passes over your day, a trivial irritation easily dismissed. But pause here. Does it not gnaw at you quietly beneath the surface, reshaping how you think, feel, and ultimately who you are? This silent erosion does not announce itself with fanfare. It moves subtly, like a predator stalking through your mind, rewriting the unspoken rules of your personal reality. Why? Because you are not simply reacting to a moment of neglect. You are caught in an intricate web woven by the most primal and ancient tendencies of the human brain, reinforced by culture, bias, and the deep human need for recognition. Consider this. Your brain, a miracle of complexity, is wired to seek social validation. It craves it like a drug, dopamine surging when you are seen, acknowledged, valued. When ignored, your neural circuits register it as pain. Neurologists have mapped this very reaction. Social rejection lights up the same regions of the brain that register physical pain. This is no metaphor. The sting of being invisible is coded in your biology, a warning signal from the deepest recesses of your mind, designed to alert you to danger, to social exile. You are not just emotionally wounded, you are physiologically threatened. But the story doesn't stop there. Our perception of social interactions is filtered through cognitive biases that twist reality in their own cruel way. The spotlight effect clouds your judgment, making you believe everyone notices your flaws, misses your worth, or scorns your presence more than they actually do. The confirmation bias traps you further, leading your mind to scan the environment obsessively for signs that support your fear of rejection, while dismissing more balanced, neutral, or even positive signs. This internal feedback loop becomes a prison of your own making, where the echo chamber of your thoughts amplifies every slight, every silence, into thunderous proof that you are unworthy. It is here, within this invisible cage of neurological wiring and cognitive distortion, that the seemingly simple act of being ignored becomes a force that shapes not only your internal world but your outward reality. When your mind turns against you, your behavior shifts. You withdraw, you second-guess, you lose the confidence that once made your presence magnetic. You become less yourself and more a shadow of the self you could be, shrinking beneath the weight of imagined judgment and real neglect. At the same time, broader societal currents conspire to deepen this effect. Cultural conditioning reinforces the notion that visibility equates to value, that presence is power, and absence is failure. From the relentless barrage of media images celebrating connection, popularity, and approval, to the social codes etched into your upbringing, you are trained to fear invisibility as a fate worse than failure. You absorb these silent lessons without questioning. To be ignored is to be less, to be diminished in the hierarchy of social worth. The paradox is chilling. Your very survival in the social order is tethered to the fickle attention of another, and when she withdraws it, you feel unmoored, untethered, perhaps even unmade. Imagine how this plays out societally. When countless individuals are ensnared in this trap, the collective psyche fractures into tribes of the seen and the unseen. The invisible retreat into themselves, while the visible dictate norms and values, consolidating power through attention. This creates not just a personal crisis but a social architecture built on exclusion, on hierarchies of presence and absence. To be ignored is not simply an individual misfortune. It becomes a structural condition that shapes interactions, influences decisions, and dictates who holds power, who is granted voice, and who remains silent. And still, You remain caught in this spiraling dynamic, teetering on the edge of despair or rage, unsure how to reclaim your footing in a world that treats your absence as a verdict. The urgency of escape is not just a matter of emotional survival, it is a question of existential freedom. How do you break the chains that bind your identity to the fleeting attention of another? How do you reclaim authority over your own presence when the cultural, neurological, and psychological forces have conspired to place you in this invisible prison? The answer teeters just beyond the horizon of awareness, waiting for the moment your mind can pierce through the fog of conditioned helplessness and see clearly. This is a game of power, not of pleading. It is a battlefield where control is not given but taken, where silence itself can be transformed from a weapon of dismissal into an instrument of command. The breakthrough you seek lies in understanding this transformation, not as a trick or manipulation, but as a profound reclaiming of your own agency in a world that demands visibility to survive. Yet you are not there yet. Before you step into this new paradigm, you must first grapple with the full magnitude of the trap itself. Otherwise, you risk falling back into its depths, swallowed whole by the very forces you wish to escape. This is no trivial task, no mere game of flirtation or favor. It is the shaping of your selfhood against the tide of invisibility, the sharpening of your presence not as a plea but as a decree. The question remains then, will you remain the hunted, a ghost fading into nothingness, or will you learn to move within the shadows as a master, turning absence into presence, silence into power? The unfolding path demands you understand the forces at play, forces that have been silently scripting your reality all along. Only then can you hope to rewrite the narrative and seize the reins of your own destiny. Imagine the very foundation of what you believed about desire and rejection crumbling beneath your feet, the ground shifting so fundamentally that everything you thought you were fighting against suddenly reveals itself as an illusion. What if the entire premise of winning her attention was a mirage, a seductive trap laid by the anxious mind desperate for validation? What if the key to escaping the prison of being ignored was not a better argument, a more charming text, or a grander gesture, but a radical inversion of your role? History is littered with those who did not chase light, but rather became the light itself. Consider Cesare Borgia, Machiavelli's exemplar of ruthless ambition and strategic mastery. He did not plead for allegiance. He demanded it by embodiment of power, by crafting an aura so magnetic that ignoring him was, quite literally, unthinkable. His was not a quest for approval, but a command of presence so profound that to dismiss him was to invite chaos upon oneself. The lesson here is not cruelty or callousness, but a transformation so complete that the game changes entirely, where you become less the supplicant and more the sovereign. This is the revolution of perspective that shatters the cycle of invisibility. To stop viewing the woman's silence or ignoring as rejection in the first place. Instead, interpret it as an invitation to reclaim your sovereignty, your self-possession. When she ignores you, she has merely removed herself from your performance. The invitation is not to perform harder, but to remove the very stage itself, the stage of seeking external validation. This shift is jarring because it requires abandoning the comfort of control through action and entering the uncomfortable realm of self-mastery without immediate feedback. How does one do this? The secret lies in mastering what Machiavelli might call the art of unpredictability coupled with profound self-containment. It's a paradox. The more you are untethered from her approval, the more magnetic you become. You do not become invisible, you become an enigma, a force of nature not to be bargained with but to be reckoned with. The laws of attraction do not bend because of desperate pleading, but because of unyielding autonomy. In practice, this means a seismic shift from chasing presence to cultivating an unshakable internal world. You become the calm eye within the storm of desire and dismissal. This internal world is not built on fantasies of what could be with her, but on a foundation of unalterable self-respect and purpose that requires no external validation. It is this space of indifference that paradoxically creates the pulse of attraction. For desire is not born from chasing shadows, but from the fire that burns independently of their acknowledgement. Look to Talleyrand, the master diplomat whose very silence was a weapon. When ignored or dismissed, he retreated not into despair or frantic overtures but into strategic withdrawal, a deliberate absence that forced others to reconsider their assumptions. He wielded invisibility like a cloak, only to reappear on his own terms, commanding respect and attention anew. His power was not in being always present, but in mastering the rhythm of appearance and disappearance. When a woman ignores you, you mimic this rhythm. Vanish not as a surrender but as a strategic withdrawal, a recalibration of your value sent silently but unequivocally. This is not a game of waiting for her to notice, but a declaration that your world is vast, intriguing, and not dependent on her light to illuminate. Your response to being ignored is no longer a question but an answer, an affirmation of your existence outside her gaze. This is the revolutionary mindset shift, to use absence as presence, silence as thunder. Such power is not granted, it is seized through disciplined transformation. Consider, too, the paradox of attraction itself. It thrives on mystery, on the unknown, on what resists capture. The more you illuminate yourself through desperate effort, the less there is to discover, until you become transparent, predictable, and thus unconsciously dismissed. But when you become a cipher, subtle, silent, unmoved, you invite curiosity, speculation, and desire. The woman ignoring you is then not a judge, but an audience waiting to be intrigued, to be drawn into the orbit of something larger than herself. This demands a radical reprogramming of your emotional reflexes. Every instinct screaming to close the distance, to break the silence with explanation or pleading, must be resisted. Instead, you cultivate composure, exercise patience, and deepen your own passions independent of her validation. Your life becomes a testament to self-mastery rather than a constant appeal for acceptance. You build a narrative so compelling internally that ignoring you would be to snub the very force of life itself. The transformation also implicates your understanding of control. Control no longer resides in forcing responses, but in mastering yourself. The locus of power moves from external reaction to internal command. This shift resonates with Machiavellian wisdom. It is not the approval of others that validates you, but your own sovereign decree of self-worth. You become not a player reacting to the board, but the player designing the board itself. History whispers of those who escaped the prison of invisibility by this very logic. Women like Cleopatra, whose allure was woven not through pursuit, but through an embodied confidence that redefined the rules of engagement. Men of power who moved with such certainty and inscrutability that others found themselves pulled inexorably into their orbit, compelled to react on their terms. Their power lay not in chasing light, but in becoming the source. This is the strategy you are invited to embody. It is neither a game of manipulation nor surrender, but a profound reclaiming of agency, a rescripting of the narrative from one of victim to one of sovereign. When a woman ignores you, you do not collapse, you ascend. You do not plead, you withdraw sovereignly. You do not dim, you shine inwardly so fiercely that her absence of attention only highlights your unyielding presence. To break free from the chains of invisibility, you must embrace this paradox. True power lies in indifference, in self-possession, and in the mastery of absence itself. This is your Machiavellian revelation, a strategy not of conquest but of transformation, where the battlefield shifts from the streets of external validation to the inner sanctum of your soul. Imagine standing at the edge of a mirror so vast it reflects not just your face but the very essence of your existence, every hope, every fear, every silent yearning you have tried to mask or suppress. In this reflection, you see the raw truth. The woman's silence, the cold shoulder, the deliberate neglect, they are not the verdicts of your worth. They are shadows cast by the flickering light of your own incomplete understanding of desire, power, and self. The profound revelation dawns. The dynamic you have been caught in is not a labyrinth built by her indifference, but a hall of mirrors constructed by your own desperate need for validation. This is not a mere shift in perspective. It is a seismic upheaval of your entire worldview. You have been chasing a phantom not because she is elusive, but because the idea of her attention has become the axis around which your self-respect spins. But what if you could dismantle that axis and build a new center, one that does not lean on external approval, but arises from an immutable core of self-sovereignty? The woman ignoring you is not the antagonist of your story. She is the catalyst, the crucible forging your transformation. She is the silence that commands you to listen, not to her, but to the profound depths within yourself that have remained unexplored, silenced by the noise of longing. This is the redefinition of reality Machiavelli did not state outright, but encoded in the labyrinth of his thoughts. Power is not a prize to be won from others' hands, but a dimension you awaken within yourself. When the world turns away, that is not a curse but an invitation, a rare and ruthless grace, that you must refuse the role of the supplicant and instead become the sovereign architect of your own desire and dignity. The paradox here is exquisite. By becoming truly unreachable in your neediness, you become irresistible. By embodying the serenity of indifference, you invert the gravity of attention. The very absence of her regard becomes a mirror reflecting your mastery. It is not about forcing her to look, but about commanding yourself to see, seeing that her indifference holds no chains over your soul. This is power distilled to its purest form, where the external world, with its shifting tides of affection and rejection, no longer dictates the shape of your inner landscape. You have been taught to equate love with possession, attention with worth, and recognition with existence. What if these are mere illusions? A grand masquerade that obscures the more terrifying but liberating truth that the only love that truly matters is the love you give yourself. To be ignored is to confront the emptiness where illusions crumble, and a raw, unmediated encounter with your own being emerges. It is a moment so naked and vulnerable that many flee, retreating into the familiar prison of chasing someone else's gaze, rather than daring to inhabit the vastness of their own presence. So, what does it mean to wield Machiavelli's strategy here, in the face of silence and invisibility? It means to leap beyond the surface struggle for attention and into the deeper game of sovereignty over the self. It means to recognize that every moment you spend trembling for her notice, you are surrendering the limitless power that lies dormant in your refusal to be diminished. Think of the night sky on the coldest winter evening. The stars do not plead to be seen. They blaze silently, sovereign and eternal. Their light is a gift, not a debt owed to any observer. To exist as you are, without apology, without craving, is to become that star. She may turn her gaze away, but your light remains unextinguished, a beacon not for her but for yourself. This is not coldness. It is fierce warmth turned inward. It is not heartlessness. It is the mastery of the heart. And when you live from this place, the game itself changes. You cease to be the prey caught in a web of desire and instead become the spider weaving a tapestry of presence that commands respect and fascination. The ultimate lesson is this: if she ignores you, it is not a verdict but an invitation. An invitation to stop living in the shadow of another's response and start embodying the fullness of your own power. This power is not win-lose, it is transmutation. It is not the capture of a prize, it is the reclamation of your soul's wholeness. It is the quiet, unassailable kingdom where desire is no longer a chain, but a force that flows from your own sovereign self. And as you stand there, alone but not lonely, unseen but not invisible, you become the paradox that every story of desire ultimately reveals. The only person who can give your life meaning is you. The only attention that carries irrevocable weight is the unwavering gaze you learn to hold upon yourself. So let her silence be the roar that shatters your illusions. Let her absence carve out the space where your true presence can emerge, unshakable, magnetic, sovereign. This is the final revelation. The struggle was never about her. It was always about becoming the ruler of your own inner realm, the master of your own destiny. Now awaken to this truth. Let it haunt you, inspire you, transform you. Because in the quiet aftermath of being ignored, you find not defeat but the genesis of an unassailable power, the power to be whole, whether seen or unseen. And in that power, all things become possible.